Hello and welcome back to Philomena.com. Today I continue my series featuring ambassadors here in Liberia, and today is extra special because I get to sit down with not only my friend, but esteemed South African ambassador to Liberia. I am joined by His Excellency Professor Iqbal Jhazbhay. Thank you so much for joining us. Say hello to the audience for me.
Thank you, Ryder, for having me today, and it's a pleasure to be with you again.
Yes, we started our relationship right here on this couch.
Indeed.
Yes, yes. So just for a little background, we met many moons ago, and I was invited over for lunch, and we started the meeting off with our love for Afrobeats.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I'll give you guys a little secret. His favorite Liberian artist, can I tell them?
Sure.
Well, at the time it was. I'm sure you've gotten a lot more recently. But at the time, Skinny Boy Panto, Charger, favorite song, favorite artist, and that was the beginning of a very beautiful friendship.
Yep. And later on, we also got to know the other well-known MC Carol.
Aha, another one of my favorites. So see, we connect on a lot of things, but today we're here to talk about a lot more than music, right? I started this series with one of your colleagues, Ambassador Toner, and I wanted to continue this series because Liberia has so much involvement by so many different countries, South Africa being one of my favorites. So the audience wants to know more about what's happening in the country with other institutions outside of the U.S. Embassy. So we're here, you're the first one. So again, thank you for joining me. So we're gonna go right into it. We're gonna have some questions and we're gonna learn a little bit more about the involvement South Africa has here in Liberia. So what are some of South Africa's key priorities, diplomatic priorities, and how do they align with the broader foreign policy goals of Liberia?
Thank you again. It's good to follow on, as you mentioned, the first interview with His Excellency, the U.S. Ambassador Mark Toner, and of course, we've gleaned a lot of lessons from him and engaging with him. And of course, the U.S. is South Africa's second largest trading partner. So it's interesting that you're doing it in that sequence.
Right, in the sequence and the order, right?
And of course, Ambassador Mark Toner and myself often get together here as well to exchange notes, and given the U.S. is a major driver of development in Liberia, much more longer than South Africa. Of course, as you know, South Africa only obtained its formal independence in 1994, and then in 1997 we chose to open an embassy in Liberia, given that we feel that one of our main foreign policy goals is to contribute towards the development of our continent of Africa. And in that regard, of course, the history between the two countries, Liberia and South Africa, is a very historic one. It's a very strategic one as well, because you may have read that Nelson Mandela was here in the 60s.
And you've even talked to me about that, yes.
Yes, and the hospitality Liberians extended to South Africans here. Many of the Soweto student leaders settled in Liberia.
Wow.
One of them married Miss Liberia and had children from her.
Wow, look at that. So Michael Jackson wasn't wrong about that Liberian girl thing.
Absolutely. You were spot on in that regard. And so when we look at our main goals here in Liberia, and given that when I arrived here in April 2022, we felt that what we really need to concentrate on is, one, is the peace-building agenda.
Right.
I think you're familiar when Charles Taylor was in power, the then ECOWAS president, President Obasanjo of Nigeria, asked our president, then President Thabo Mbeki, to help him bring about peace in Liberia. So South Africa sent the Army, the Navy, Special Forces, our ministers, to engage then President Charles Taylor. And the last lap of that peace building program was our former president Mbeki came here with his own airplane and persuaded Charles Taylor to fly with him from here to Abuja as had been agreed.
Right.
So peace building is a bedrock.
Well, I was going to go there and say the post-conflict, what was the involvement? But there you go. I mean, a huge part of it. And goes back to, you know, we're post-conflict, post-war, and then you look at somewhere like South Africa that's post-apartheid. Do you see any similarities with the two? I mean, of course, I think both nations experience, you know, a lot of loss and a lot of conflict, but do you think because of the post-apartheid experience, it was easier for your country to help us kind of navigate the post-conflict section of our time?
I think there are many similarities.
Yes.
I recall reading recently, they were looking at the 3 top diverse countries in Africa. Number 1 on the list was Liberia, as being the most diverse country on the continent.
Really?
Yeah. Number 2 was Uganda, and number 3 was South Africa.
Wow.
It
Very
prompted
interesting.
me to reflect on the question you had posed. So the issue of national cohesion, social cohesion, that was the main challenge of Mandela when he came into power. How to reach out to all the diverse communities in South Africa. Like I was mentioning earlier on, that you make peace with even those you don't like.
Right.
That's
We
the
just
only
talked about
way.
that.
Yeah. So you had seen how in that Hollywood movie Invictus, where how he tried to make popular the well-known sports in South Africa, rugby, which was considered at that time mainly an Afrikaner white sport. But he reached out, engaged with the rugby team, and then South Africa agreed to host the World Cup rugby. And in that year, South Africa won the World Cup rugby. So how sports becomes a huge social cohesion tool.
Right. To bring people together, yeah.
I mean, I recall myself, I'm not very fond of rugby because as political activists against apartheid, we saw it too much as apartheid white sport.
Right.
But for the first time I sat with friends and I watched the World Cup rugby in South Africa. So it helped us also to cross many of our barriers in life
Right.
on the issue of social cohesion. So I think Liberia has the same challenge, so does South Africa.
Right.
And as we all know, nation building is an ongoing exercise.
Yeah.
They say it's like a marriage.
You have to continue to work.
If you don't see each other and don't engage, you forget about it.
Exactly. You have to keep working on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I didn't have these in my questions, but can you tell us a little bit more about your life in South Africa? You talk about your activism. Like, I want people to know, I know about this. We've talked about it in length, but talk to us about how you started. You know, how, I know activism, how did you get to this point?
Well, almost most of us living in South Africa, we're right at the cold face of experiencing apartheid. Racial discrimination, inequalities, and apartheid in motion there. So many of us in high school became very politically conscientized that what we're experiencing is not correct. And in our family homes, we would speak about this. I mean, for example, if you read that famous book by Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, you would see in the index on some of the key names like Amina Pahad, the mother of the late former deputy foreign minister, where Mandela would go to her house and then as a family they will speak about the challenges of inequality, discrimination. So that helped us to know, to understand our environment a bit better. Then after completing my high school in Durban, South Africa, I felt very uncomfortable with the situation in South Africa. And we felt we need to go abroad and get quality education because, as you know, even the youth universities were discriminated. We had a white university, the university only for blacks, and then the university for South Africans of Indian background.
And that's where you fell into.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this goes back that our grandfathers and grandmothers migrated to South Africa under British colonialism, and then they brought us up in South Africa. Father and mother were both born in South Africa. The same with my generation of kids.
Yeah.
And
kind of like Liberia, where you see these other races that are born here. Same thing, yeah.
Exactly. So, and then I went to the American University in Cairo, where I did my initial studies on the Middle East and Arabic. And thereafter I decided to continue it in Saudi Arabia and do my undergraduate degree. And to continue that trajectory, I ended up in Manchester University doing my master's degree once again in Middle Eastern studies and culture.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, it's so interesting because when you hear about the apartheid state, and obviously right now, in this time in history, apartheid, the word apartheid is being brought back because of the ongoing conflict in Palestine. But it's interesting because when you think about that, you only think about the black and white. You have a whole different perspective where you said South Africans of Indian descent were also discriminated against. So you are a living, breathing proof, and you lived through it, and you saw through it. So that is amazing, and it's amazing that that catapulted you to where you are today. I mean, look at you, you're here in Liberia now. Okay. So are there any specific sectors that South Africa is collaborating with here in Liberia to drive the economic growth?
Sure. I think there are three big priorities. Number one, it's mining. South Africa is a big mining country, right? The early discovery of gold, the biggest deposit in the world in the early 1950s and 60s. So the big project there was Liberia's largest investment was the $800 million expansion of the iron ore mine in Yakepa, Nimba.
Okay, Nimba. Okay.
So it's a South African company which was appointed WHO to complete that expansion.
Wonderful.
Simply it means they were exporting 5 million tons last year. This year it means 10 million, moving up to 30 million, which then means the largest taxpayer, ArcelorMittal, which was paying $60 million a year, will now be paying this year 6 times 2, 120 million,
wow.
Moving up to 30 million tons, and it'll double up. So that's the first thing, the expansion, and the railway expansion.
Okay, wonderful.
Well. Yeah.
Will it be from the one from Nimba to Buchanan? Okay.
And that has been implemented, and it's an ongoing project to further expand the railway line. It started in 2023 when I went to visit Yakepa there and the iron ore mine. Now it's completed, so the exports can also improve now, as I mentioned, from 5 to 30 million. The second big project is the South African businessman Robert Gumede of the Goma Group, in partnership with the USA Ivanhoe mining magnate Robert Friedland. They both have 50% shares in the Liberty Transport Corridor. So the MOU was signed with the president and the government of Liberia. Now the 5 points of expansion and implementation of the Liberty Transport Corridor is unfolding. A new port next to Buchanan, an upgraded road from Guinea-Conakry to Buchanan.
Nice.
The fiber optic line, it's being negotiated with MTN South Africa. The government of Liberia has already given the concession for the iron ore on St. John's River. And the fifth one, which is now being negotiated by doing first an environmental study, is a multi-purpose railway line from Guinea-Conakry to the port of Buchanan.
Wow.
So and that's a $5 billion project. So those are the two big ones we, as an embassy, as a government of South Africa, are giving all the necessary supports. For example, South African businesses will only come in here if we get the credit guarantees from the South African government, from our export credit and insurance commission, as it were. So those are the two big ones. And then, so you got mining, and a huge number of South Africans as mining engineers. I mean, if you go to Buchanan, you'll bump into at least 100 South African technical engineers, civil engineers, to make sure the exports go very well. So that's the two big ones, mining, infrastructure. I think you may have heard of the big South African businessman, Robert Gumede.
Yes.
Came here last year, January, signed that MOU, which I mentioned. And then he told the president, I'm going to deliver to you in February, next month, 265, as they call it here, yellow machines, heavy duty.
Caterpillar,
Caterpillar.
Caterpillar yellow machines, yes.
So that was delivered. I know there was a bit of a delay in rolling them out. It was just recently announced every county will get 19 pieces of the yellow machines. And they came up with a arrangement as to what will be the real costing. And I think it was now estimated at $22 million.
Wow.
So roads.
And it's what we need. So I like that the promise was there and it's delivered, and we're seeing the action. I always say, before we can talk about any other sectors developing, infrastructure has to be there first, because you can bring all the necessary equipment but unless the roads are able to receive, said equipment, we're stuck. So you guys are very busy. So big shout out to South Africa. Thank you so much for your efforts. And then that opens the door for more businesses, for more South Africans to come in outside of mining, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm sure you will be instrumental in getting some of those businesses here. I know you already are. You've already kind of opened those doors and opened the conversation, at least, and introduced people of the possibilities.
Yep. We've had a formal request from the government of Liberia to get involved fully in the issue now that you have a new government. One was the question of branding, the way Liberia is conceived outside, the way Liberia wants to also conceive of itself after consultation. So in the Ministry of Information and Tourism, the minister himself had a formal online meeting with our brand South Africa.
Oh, nice.
And that happened end of last year. And emerging out of that, they were now just invited to South Africa. So the Assistant Minister, May Louisa, for Tourism and Branding, is currently in South Africa. We'll be happy to share
Look at that.
those pictures. And on the same thing about branding and tourism, when Robert Gumede was here 2 weeks ago, he had just signed with the new president of Ghana to consolidate the tourism sites in Ghana. So I chatted to him. I said that approach will also work well
Here in Liberia.
So the existing sites like Kokon Lodge, the Nimba,
Waterfalls, all these, Atawi, all these different, Robert's Port. Yes,
beautiful.
yes.
So he just signed the $20 million consolidation of the tourist sites. I told him the same approach will work well. I mean, Kokon is such a beautiful place.
Of course, shout out to my, I don't know if you know this, I'm on the board for Linda. Did you know that?
Yes.
So Lisa and Rudolph, who are a conglomerate now of beautiful eco lodges now in Nimba, Robert's Port, Cocoon right here in Grand Bassa, Libassa in Marshall. They have kind of set the tone and the blueprint of what should be done here when it comes to tourism. Beautiful, beautiful lodges.
I mean, now that we have South Africa's top construction company based here, they implemented that $800 million project. In South Africa, they've done most of the airports, the shopping malls, as well as the shopping malls in Accra. We could explore what logistically will work best consolidating research. I mean, I went there to Coconut Lodge, right across Marshall, this beautiful island there. I'm sure the middle class here, the noble rich bourgeoisie class, the diplomats, the ambassadors, over weekends,
Of course.
go to
Love to it.
6-9 star hotel,
Yes.
which could be developed. So we're busy now in that regard on deciding on what would be the key entry points in tourism. And we feel initially consolidate the existing,
Right.
so it could be upgraded and
Well, that is music to my ears. Tourism is my cup of tea. And a lot of my viewers, they've always asked, why not tourism? Why not tourism? Because tourism makes sense. But then we go back to the same subject that we have to get the infrastructure
Roads, yeah.
to get there. But we'll get there. And I think with your help, I think we're on the right path.
Now, as they say, it takes two hands to clap.
Now,
You can't
one
clap
hand
with
can't
one hand.
clap.